This is our very first episode of the Julie Life Cooking at Home, which is going to be a mix of learning about the ingredients that we use in Julie Life, but also learning how you can integrate it into your regular cooking, and a little bit of my home cooking, which will be plant-based, but will also include meats and dairy and all those lovely things, but also show you how you can reduce the amounts, make your food healthier, integrate superfoods, and where vegan supplements for, say, Parmesan cheese are completely wonderful and appropriate if that's what you would like. Then we're going to start with herbs, because we use so many herbs in Julie Life Cooking. And part of the reason why we use so many herbs is because the herbs have everything in them that is health giving in concentration. So I think of herbs as the plant elixir, the concentrated vitamin form of plant life that is full of oils and nutrients and micronutrients, antioxidants that not only boost the flavor of your dish, but also boost your health too. So the first we're going to look at is curly leaf parsley, which you find in the grocery store all the time. And actually, I never use it. I don't use it because I think it adds a texture to a dish that is quite unpleasant. And the flavor is not as delicate as flat leaf parsley, which I use all the time. Parsley is not a flavor I love, so you will find me chopping it very finely if it's going to be raw, or cooking with it. When I cook with it, I use it two ways. I put it in at the beginning of a dish, and then I also put it in as a finisher. But the wonderful thing about parsley is it is a great detoxifier. It detoxifies your liver, it detoxifies your blood, and it helps you to feel good, to release the sludge in the liver. So parsley is something I use all the time. Mint. The smell of mint in and of itself is relaxing. So mint is very calming, both to the mind as well as to the stomach. So for my clients that have intestinal issues or acid reflux, mint within food, preferably raw, or mint used as a tea, which I'll do a different section on tea, but mint tea is wonderful if you just take a bunch of mint, pour water over it, and let it seep. But mint is one of those herbs that's great at the end of the meal, and it's wonderful if you tend toward upset stomach. Chives, something I also use a lot. And I tend to use chives at the very end of a dish, kind of as a garnish, as well as in raw dishes, because it gives you a pleasant onion flavor without any of the bite or the acrid nature that a raw onion can have. These are onion chives. I also use garlic chives, which have a flatter leaf and have a very delicate taste of garlic. Next is basil. Everybody knows basil. It's October, so it's the end of basil season. This is from the farmer's market, but you can see some sort of dark spaces on it, and that's just because it's too cold, really, to be growing basil. But basil is extremely aromatic, can be used cooked and raw, and when you cook it, use more than you think, because when you cook it, the taste, the flavor becomes a lot more mellow. Basil is something also that I love, love, love to add at the end of soups that I'm going to puree. So say, for example, I'm cooking a zucchini soup. At the very end of the cooking, I will turn the fire off. I will put a whole handful of basil in, and I will very gently puree it into the soup. Or if it's going to be like a tomato soup that I want completely pureed, I'll puree the tomato soup, then at the end add in the raw basil, and just 1-2 times in the Vitamix so that you still get little flecks of green, and you get the flavor of the basil. So basil is something I love. I prefer it cooked or in soups. I'm really not a fan of raw basil, although I know lots of people love it. Second is dill. And dill is close to my heart because it is used in almost every Russian dish that you would make. I love dill. I love dill for its flavor, for how it looks, for its feel. It's so soft and feathery, and I love dill flowers. Oftentimes I will have them in the kitchen. And also it's a beneficial plant. So if you have a vegetable garden, the flowers will attract butterflies, but it also attracts lots of like parasitic wasps, which are actually good for your garden because they keep away tomato hornworm and aphids and things like that. So I love dill. Dill I use mainly raw. And dill, even though it looks very fine, is actually a very strong herb. So when I use dill, I chop it really, really fine, and then I sprinkle it on the dish. I don't want to overpower it unless it's a Russian dish that has a lot of body to it and it can really take the flavor of dill. Another favorite breakfast is a piece of bread, beauty bread or regular bread, a little cheese, dairy there, put some dill sprigs on top and toast it, and it's a delicious breakfast. And it really takes me back to time spent in the countryside in Russia. But dill goes well with beets, carrots, cold salads. It goes well with fish. It goes well with potatoes. It goes well with mushrooms, of course. So I love dill. It's a very special herb. Cilantro. Cilantro has its lovers and its haters. I happen to be one of its lovers. And at Jolie, we oftentimes use cilantro sprouts, which are so much smaller than this and a little bit milder. And so for the cilantro haters, it's a little bit easier to take. But cilantro has such an incredible fresh flavor. And whenever you add it to a dish, it gives you just the feeling of being in the Caribbean or being in Central America. It just, this lovely, spicy, fresh, non-European flavor. And I love it when we make tacos. I love it in salads. I really love the sprouts in salad. It just kind of wakes up a salad. I love it in chilies. I love it in some of the soups that I make, but this is an herb that I try to have on hand at all times. Next is rosemary, a favorite but really, really strong, and it's super easy to overdo rosemary. So when you're using rosemary, think about that much. If you love rosemary, think about probably about that much. And rosemary is one of those herbs that you want to cook. If you're going to put it in a dish, chop it fine and then add it into the dish as you're cooking. Also, rosemary I use a lot when I'm doing cooking at home with beef, lamb, chicken, as a flavoring. Fish, I will stuff a whole fish like I did last night with rosemary and thyme and some lemon, put it in the oven, let it cook. It's fabulous. But I love rosemary. Just be careful. It's a little easy to overdo. Thyme, again, I use it all the time. In every broth I make, there is thyme. And usually about this much is enough. Every soup, if I'm making a soup or a broth, I will put it in just like this. And then at the end, I will fish out the little sticks. Sometimes I don't want to do that, or it's going to go in a sauce or something like that. So then I will very gently, my fingers here, take the leaves off, and then just use it with the leaf. And when I use it in cooking, a non-broth, I will saute it with the onions and garlic. And I'll saute the onions and garlic. Once they're soft, I'll throw in the thyme and then everything else. Mushrooms, love thyme, so I always use them with mushrooms. When I do the breakfast hash, which is a breakfast dish we have at Jolie, which is just the freshest vegetables at the market, all sauteed together. Frequently for the hardier vegetables like leeks and carrots, we'll throw in thyme. So thyme is one of those must-haves. Sage, not so much. So sage for me really comes into its glory in fall because it complements pumpkin so much. It gets you ready for Thanksgiving. Um, it is very healthful though, but it does have a very strong smell, which isn't as strong as, say, the sage, the white sage that you use to clear energy with, but it still has that hint of stinkiness that all sage has. So I use probably the most would be 2 to 3 leaves. It's great, amazing with cauliflower, and we use it in our cauliflower sage soup. But it's one of those herbs that if I could keep it, would probably last me a whole month or so because you honestly don't use much. And it's the same with oregano, although oregano is less strong than sage. So if I'm making a tomato sauce or bolognese, I might use like that much of it. So maybe this would be like 3 dishes. I don't have it here, but oregano's cousin is marjoram, which has slightly smaller leaves but really looks a lot like oregano. It is a lot milder, and so I will use marjoram more often. I will even use marjoram with fresh salads and remove the stems, take off the leaves, chop, 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 and just throw it in. The one herb I don't have here because it's mainly a spring herb is shrivel, which we use a ton. And think of it as a marrying between parsley, tarragon, which is another one that I missed, and maybe a little bit of dill. But shrivel is magical, and I will do a different video on some of the spring herbs like shrivel and tarragon because they're really special. And in French cooking, they transform dishes. So here we have it. I hope you enjoyed this. And I urge you to pick 1 or 2 herbs and begin to integrate them into your cooking. And your tongue, your palate, and your body will thank you so much. So it's been such a joy, and I can't wait to the next one. See you.